they're like strata of
Okay.
BCIs. So there are what are called intracortical BCIs. That's like Paradromics and Neuralink, and this older 1989 technology, which is called the Utah array. Those devices reach down to the brain and record single neurons. Then there are surface electrodes, like Precision is a good example, or it just came out that Andreessen Horowitz is backing famous neurosurgeon Eddie Chang, who has another surface recording approach. Surface recording is sort of recording the like roar of the crowd when a lot of neurons are doing
And surface meaning on the skull?
Surface of the brain. So
Okay.
it's called electrocorticography, but that's a lot to say, so I just said surface. But recording on the brain surface and then sensing like when a lot of neurons are doing something very correlated, what can we see?
But not actual electrodes into the brain. But
yeah, electrodes on the brain. So I'll start with kind of those two types. Okay. The best way to think about that in a sort of physical analogy is that intracortical devices, you can think of them as microphones that you're dropping into a stadium. If you drop one microphone into a stadium, you're going to hear the voices of whatever people are sitting on the bleachers around that microphone. If you take the same microphone and you put it in the parking lot outside of the stadium, you will still be able to hear whenever the crowd gets up and does something all at the same time, and the sound is very correlated, like they're cheering, you'll know it. You'll hear the sort of like volume envelope get louder, but you won't be able to hear individual voices in the stands. Now, what's interesting about this is that when you start adding more microphones, if you're inside the stands and you start dropping in more microphones, each microphone will hear a new conversation. But if you're in the parking lot and you start adding more microphones, the microphones are all fundamentally recording the same thing. They're recording the same roar of the crowd. And so you see exactly the same thing in neural recording. When you put intracortical electrodes into the brain to record from single neurons, every neuron is more or less doing its own thing. The correlations between neurons is really low. And so every time you put a new intracortical electrode into the brain, you're getting proportionally more data. But on the surface of the brain, if two electrodes are within a millimeter of each other, they're more than 50% correlated. And as they get to be within, let's say, 1/10 of a millimeter of each other, they're more than 90% correlated, which means that putting more electrodes on the surface of the brain is quickly diminishing marginal returns, versus putting more electrodes into the brain, you just get more data.
What is the actual, in terms of those that are the companies that are sitting on the surface of the brain, what is the data that they're getting, like specifically?
If you're on the surface of the brain, then
and that's the outside the stadium analogy.
Exactly.
Okay.
You're recording effectively contributions from tens of thousands of neurons. So when tens of thousands of neurons on average are doing more of one thing or more of another, then it produces this, it is a roar of the crowd. It's the superposition of all of the little blips of electrical signal that produces a local field potential, which is basically a wave. And then this wave has frequency content, from 1 hertz to a few kilohertz.
And if there was someone forced you to run that type of company, which
Mm-hmm.
you wouldn't want to for what you just described in terms of the inside versus outside the stadium, what would you then say is the optimal use case for that methodology?
It's very good for diagnostics. I would definitely use it for any situation where you need to put it in and take it out, and you're going to be taking it out in short order, because I think.
And just what kind of diagnose?
Well, epilepsy is a classic. You're trying to figure out if someone is going to be a good patient for epilepsy surgery. But I think I could even imagine looking out in the future, there may be other neuropsychiatric conditions where, let's say schizophrenia, where you don't need moment-to-moment data to tell whether someone's going to respond to one drug or another drug, but getting in there and recording really hot, sort of higher fidelity data, under the skull than you could have versus any non-invasive method would allow you to subtype patients and direct them toward the right course of medication rather than having them do it by trial and error.
Got it.
Any place where like real-time high data rate feedback is not what you're looking for, you can sacrifice some time by averaging over a lot of different measurements, which is the case in diagnostics.
So in a way that approach or those companies on a practical basis you're not competitive in the sense of use cases.
I think right now,
meaning you both have clearly different paths if both sides are being, we'll call it, not too illogical on what's their optimal use cases.
I think right now all of the companies in the BCI space are kind of posturing that they're going to do all of the things. It's just the nature of early stage platform startups. Everyone's going to do everything. Everyone's platform can do everything. I think in reality, as the companies mature, they're going to diverge more than converge.